Hello again, it's Tuppence. Welcome to my channel. I've been shopping on Temu again and I found this beautiful sun and moon face mould, and I'm afraid I got Temued, which means that this is much smaller than I thought it was going to be. You can see it is very delicate, but the mould is really thick. The edges of the mould are really thick. This was not what I was expecting. They did put the measurements there, but they measured from the back of the mould, and you can see that the design itself is very much smaller. So I'm not going to be able to use it for what I actually wanted to. I had some resin left over when I was doing another project, so I did cast it, and I can see the detail. You probably can't because of the colouring, but it also gives me a really good representation of the size. Look, if I put it in my hand, you can see it's no bigger than my palm. I put this down on the side, and I happened to put it on top of a coaster that I had just on the side. I've already made a video on this, and that's not what this is about. It's just to show you that when I popped this down on the coaster, it looked balanced and it looked like it belonged there. So I think if I make a coaster with the right coloration, I think this will work and it will make my mould look bigger. So I'm going to make the sun and the moon and a coaster. I'm going to start with the sun and the moon, and I've got these chameleon powders. I've got teal, champagne and golden, and I've got some of these chameleon flakes which I got from Temu. So I might not use those in there just yet. So I'm going to start with the teal, and I'll use a makeup brush to paint in the moon. This mould is meant for fondant and chocolate, so it's quite squidgy, and the mica powder sticks to it really well. There are, however, lots of really fine areas. Now the makeup brush gets into them fine, but I am going to pull the mould slightly just to make sure that I get into all of those edges. You can see I'm just pulling it apart, and it's soft enough that you can do that. I'm using a cotton bud, and I've got a little bit of isopropyl alcohol. I'm cleaning off any of the mica powder that's spilled onto the other side. I want the sun side to be obviously sun coloured, and I don't want any blue in there. I'm going to use the golden and the champagne colour, which I'm a little dubious about. Doesn't seem to be the colour of champagne to me, but we'll see. So just clean my brush off on my glove, and I'm going to go ahead and repeat the process and paint both of these colours into the sun area. And because I already have blue mica down in the moon, I don't have to worry about it spilling over. That's done. I just need to clean this up around the edge. I want to try a crackle effect with the coaster, but before I do that, I want to use some of these chameleon flakes and just put them randomly around the edge. I want to give the impression that there are some sun flares flying off of it. So I'm going to brush them onto the mould, again using a makeup brush, but really randomly. I don't care if some of them do go onto the surface. You can remove them with a piece of sticky tape. I really don't mind them being on there. So they're sticking really well, although they are a little bit flyaway. And I'm buffing them in And I'm going to tilt this now so you can see what it looks like. There you go. So I've never tried a crackle effect before. I'm going to go ahead and mix up some resin. This is some JDiction's 4-hour cure resin, and I've got French blue Arteza Mica and rich gold Arteza Mica. I'm going to pour a small amount into each pot first. Then I can add the mica powder, and you need quite a lot of mica powder. I'll mix that into the small amount of resin, make a paste, and make sure that there are no lumps before I add the rest of the resin. And I'm going to put about 20 mils into each of these cups. Now I can mix that mica in without it flying all over the place. That colour is lovely. So I'm going to do the same for the blue. Make sure it's all nice and mixed. And then I'm going to let it sit for a few minutes to let the bubbles out. So my colours are blue and gold, and I'm going to use the clear as the push colour. I'm laying down a thin coat onto the coaster. Now most of this will run off the surface and down into the edges. So let me just wipe that off, and I'm going to give this a helping hand by tipping the coaster so that it runs all the way around the edges. I want that to be coated, and I'm hoping I haven't put too much in here. This is a slightly thicker resin, and from what I understand you do want to use a medium viscosity or even a slightly thicker one. Normally I would use craft resin, which I think you'd have to let sit for a while. I'm just going to use a stick because I can see quite a few bubbles along the edges, so I'm going to encourage those to lift up. Because this is going to set that much quicker, it hasn't got quite so much time for the bubbles to release naturally. I don't want to scrape those flakes off either, so I'm just doing it very gently. And that will do. It's pretty thick. I might actually have a little bit too much in there, so I'm going to scoop some out. You really only want a thinnish layer, just enough for your resin that your colours to glide over the surface. And I am going to need some of it to push the colours afterwards as well. So you scoop that out and then make sure that the resin lays flat back across that surface again. So again, just doing a little bit of tipping. I want to make sure that those holes close up where I've scraped down to the mould. Almost got a couple of stubborn ones there, so just pop a little bit more. Okay, that should be fine. So now I can start with my colours. Just mix this up so that the mica hasn't settled. And I'm going to pour some, as much in the middle as I can, almost. Luckily you've got almost bullseye rings on the bottom of the mould to aim for. So that's my blue. Mix up my yellow a little bit. I said yellow, I meant gold. And try and aim for the middle. Oops, I got a little splash in there. I don't think that matters. So I'm gonna keep pouring, a bit like a puddle pour. That wasn't very central. So I'll alternate with these colours. Now I want to make sure that I do leave enough room for the push, so I'm going to give one more blue puddle in the middle. And now I can use the clear to push these out. Try and get it in the middle. You can see it pushing those colours outwards. So I'm just going to let that sit for a minute and watch what it does. Oh, that looks really pretty in the middle. I've still got some more room, so I'm going to add a little bit of blue again, just a very small amount, and then another push of clear. There we go. And I'll leave that alone. I had a little bit of clear left and I've mixed the rest of the blue with that. And I'm going to add a couple of drops of black acrylic ink. And I think there might be something wrong with my dropper because it never wants to pick up any of the ink. So I'm going to try and just put in, I really only want very, 1 or 2 drops. That'll do. And I'll mix this up, and I'm going to use this as the backing for the sun. Now ideally I would have used a slightly less thick resin because there are so many small areas that this has got to go into, but I have this resin here and it looks like it's going to be just about enough, so I didn't want to waste it. I'm going to pour a tiny bit in, and I'm hoping that this is going to be dark enough behind these chameleon powders. I'm going to use a silicone tool to gently encourage this to go in, and again I need to be really careful. I don't want to be scraping off the colour that I've already put there, so I'm just encouraging that resin to get into all of these little intricate sun rays and moonbeams. I'm sort of patting the surface of the mould, trying to remove any bubbles that might be stuck around the eyes and the nose. There are a few bubbles on the surface, so I'm going to give that a spray of alcohol. I'm just going to shield that coaster, and I'm using isopropyl alcohol to pop the bubbles on the back of the sun. So now we wait for it to cure. Okay, it's been over 4 hours now, and this is still a little soft, but I should be ready to demold this. And I'm liking the back, so I'm really excited to see what the front looks like. So it is, as I say, still pretty soft. So once I've demolded this, I'm just going to leave it flat. Oh, I can already see some gold, which is great. I like that. I love that crackle effect. I don't know if that's what it's supposed to look like in the middle, but I'm really loving it around the edge. So yeah, very happy with that. And just going to leave that flat so that it completely hardens up. But yeah, good. All right, let's have a look at this. Now, this really is pretty bendy, so I'm going to actually leave that for a little bit longer because of those fine details. Back later. It's much later and this should be ready to demold now. So I'm going to do it gently because of these fine details, especially that piece there. It's hanging on by a thread, I think. These seem to be coming out okay. This mould is super soft. I've got some over pour and I'm going to be able to cut that off later. It's a really thin film, so should be able to either pull that off or just take it off with some scissors. Okay, I am loving the detail, but not so much the colours. That golden, and what is that? That's not champagne, that's red. Champagne's not red. So yeah, I'll have to do something about those colours. That's not what I was going for, but it is so pretty. So yeah, I will trim all those bits off afterwards. I want to address the colours first, but this is where it will fit, and I think that's going to look perfect. It really does look like it's made for it. Yeah. Okay, so let me sort these colours out. I'm going to use this kind of coppery pen it's from JDiction. It's a chrome pen, and I'm going to highlight the surface and just rub some on like you would like rub and buff, really, just to highlight some areas, and I'll put some on my finger and rub that on there, and that wasn't really actually catching so much, so I went back to just using the pen itself, which was making an awful scratchy noise. Yeah, I've cut that out, so you're welcome. But I think this is going to make it look a lot better. You can see it's really brightening this area up. I'm also going to use the lighter gold version, and this was more of the colour tones that I wanted when I used those mica powders. But actually, even though that has come out totally wrong colour for me, it's added so much depth that, yeah, I don't mind it. I think this has just improved it. I'm going to use the silver marker on the moon and do exactly the same. Okay, I've added some shine using those chrome markers, but because it was a matte mould, it's still not quite shiny enough, and it's not giving me that glowing effect that you get from the sun and the moon. I'm going to coat this with a little bit of UV resin that will restore some of the shine. I've got some Aurora powder that I've mixed into it, just a very small amount, and this one has a green tinge, so I'm going to put it on the moon and I'll coat over the surface, and that should help to restore the shine. I think that will be enough. Now before I cure it, I'm going to drop on some of this holographic glitter. So I've just got a micro brush stick that I've taken the brush off, and I'm sprinkling the glitter over the surface. I really only want a small amount just to drop randomly. And because I've only got the UV resin on this side so far, it'll only stick on that side. I can brush it off of the sun. So now I'll pop this underneath my lamp to cure. The moon is cured, and I've also cured the resin that's in this pot because I'm going to reuse it. I've put some more clear resin in there, and I'm going to mix in a yellow tinted Aurora powder, and then I will coat the sun and cure that. Once it was coated, I flash cured it. I cured it for about 10 to 15 seconds, enough time to keep it sticky so that I could apply some chameleon flakes. So I attached the flakes and then rubbed them in, gave it another quick coat of the resin, and then I cured it properly. Right, that's all cured, and I think it looks much better, shinier. I'm going to use some super glue to attach this. So get it centered, because once this is down, it pretty much sticks immediately. There we go. I think that looks perfect, and I think it has made the best of a very tiny mould. I would happily buy a much larger mould. I love the contrast between the moon and the sun, and I'm really happy with the way that that coaster came. That's my very first crackle effect, and yeah, I'm going to be doing more of those, I think. If you've liked this, please give me a thumbs up, comment, share and subscribe if you haven't. That's free. The QR code that is on the screen will be an easy way for you to subscribe to my channel if you're on the TV. Just open your camera app and point the phone at it and it'll give you a chance to subscribe. Please also check my description box below, and that will give you lots of information about the products that I've used and where you can find them. I also have a wish list down there should anybody want to gift me anything. Not obligatory, but I would be so happy to receive it, and you may get a mention on a future video. Thank you so much for watching. Please come back and see what I'm going to make next time. Take care. Bye.